Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for today's webinar, which is an introduction to disability services and financial planning. I'm Lori Shogren. I'm the Community Services Director at the National Ataxia Foundation, and I'll be assisting with today's webinar, which is a collaborative effort among the National Ataxia Foundation, the Huntington's Disease Society of America, and MassMutual SpecialCare. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker and session moderator, Allison Bartlett, who is the Senior Manager of Disability Programs at the Huntington's Disease Society of America. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you so much for having me here today. I know this is a really set of important topics that not always, people are so excited to learn about, but it's really important that everyone's here, and I'm really glad we get to do this today. Just a little bit of background about me and the disability program. So the disability program at the Huntington's Disease Society of America provides resources and education in a wide variety of disability topics, from Social Security and insurance benefits to legal and financial planning. I work directly with the community, including HD impacted families, social workers, clinical care teams, medical professionals, and lawyers, so across the board. I've created a large resource library with handouts, guides, and webinars to help walk the community, not just the HD community, really anybody who needs to use it, through all steps of the disability process. I've had the privilege to work with the HD community for close to 10 years now. I am a licensed attorney. I have my JD from the University of Cincinnati College of Law, a bachelor's in international affairs from James Madison, and I'm admitted to the Virginia bar. So that's a little bit about myself. The lovely Kelly Piacenti has also joined us today, and she is responsible for MassMutual's SpecialCare program, which includes nearly 400 financial professionals across the country who have received extensive training in special needs planning. She also oversees partnerships between MassMutual and some of the largest special needs nonprofit organizations. Kelly serves on United Cerebral Palsy's National Board of Directors and on the advocacy board for both the Academy of Special Needs Planners, and the American College Center for Special Needs. Kelly lives in Chester, New Jersey with her husband and children, and was the mother of a child with special needs for 19 years. Through her personal and professional experiences, Kelly possesses the knowledge, insight, and empathy to act as a resource for families facing similar challenges. And you will all learn today that Kelly is a wealth of knowledge, and she's phenomenal, and she can answer all of these questions just with a snap of her fingers. And before we get into the questions today, I did just want to give a little overview about what disability really is, and just a brief overview of the timeline for planning. But so the reason I want to talk about what disability is, because whenever I ask someone, they literally say it's Social Security disability. I'm like, yes, kind of, but it's so much more than that. So if you look up what a disability is in the dictionary, it's defined as any condition which makes it more difficult for a person to do certain activities or interact with the world around them. That's really broad. So then that means disability services, and what a disability really is actually really, really broad in scope. So how I define disability services are services and programs that help a person with a disabling condition navigate the world around them. And the things that we're really going to focus on are things like genetic and disability rights, accommodations and employment rights, health and other insurance. And other insurance includes life insurance, disability insurance, critical care insurance. It's a whole bunch of things. And then disability insurance and disability benefits, specifically legal planning and financial planning. And a lot of the questions we're going to answer today deal with all of these things. But what I really want to put in everyone's brain is that disability isn't just a singular financial benefit. It is a whole way of life, and there's a whole lot of planning and a lot of different steps that go into it. And we understand that it can be overwhelming, which is why we're doing this webinar. We want to give you the tools, answer some questions, just let you know where to start, because this could easily be a 1,000-step process. We're not trying to get you through all 1,000 steps today. What are the first 10 steps to make you more comfortable and to make you feel empowered about this process? So what does the ideal timeline for disability planning look like? There is no ideal timeline because we don't live in a perfect world. If in a perfect world, everyone would know what their diagnosis is well in advance, and we know that's not a possibility. But if things could play out an ideal world, or just to help everybody as best as possible with things, especially like ataxia and Huntington's disease, things that are genetic conditions, things that are family diseases, that you may know you are at risk for. If you could, in the pre-symptomatic or early stages of the conditions, like this is what I would like to call the planning stage. So, and this even includes like your first job out of college, like your first job, the first time you have access to benefits, you want to take advantage of all these things. So you want to plan, you want to research your financial, legal, insurance, and disability options. What is a 401k? What is an IRA? You want to start financial planning. You want to purchase relevant insurance. So we're not going to talk a lot about that aspect today, but there are a lot of insurance companies that ask if you have a family history of a disease, if you have personally been tested. So for many individuals, if you've actually been diagnosed with your condition, it is too late to get most insurances. Which is why we're trying to get everyone to plan as early as possible, but we know that is not always the reality. So that means if you plan in the early stages, by the time your condition starts to impact you more, I'd like to call this the action stage. This is when like you might have to stop working because your HD or your ataxia is impairing your ability to work. So you're applying and receiving disability benefits. You're executing your legal and financial documents, guardianship, durable power of attorney, wills, estate planning, trusts. So that means when you get to the late stages of the condition, I would call this the benefit stage. Like the goal is that once you get to this stage, you use the benefits that are already in place. Things like Medicaid is already in place, legal decision making is already in place, so you don't have to think about it. You just get to care, like you, as if you are the person who has a disabling condition, you get to be cared for. There's no concerns, or you provide the care for your loved one and you're not trying to get everything together. And if necessary, then somebody can get transferred to long-term care if that is the decision that you have made for yourself or your family member, your loved one. But realistically, we're talking about all of this. So when you get to the point that you need all of these things, you're not scrambling to get them done. Everything is already set out. So some of the stress is relieved from this stressful situation. I know, Kelly, one of the questions that we have for you is, why is it important to begin planning early and how early? So what else can you add?
So a couple things that I would think about is government benefits pays for quite a bit. A lot of people that have a disability receive a monthly check. There are things that are covered. But when we think about planning, I always say to my families, begin by thinking about medical treatment you're receiving. Think about employment. Think about education. Years ago, people with disabilities didn't go on to higher education. Now they do. There are programs across the country. Think about some of those programs. Think about skill development. Is there somebody that could train the person you're caring for, or if you're that person, for the type of job that you're looking for? Not everything is covered by government benefits. So when we think of planning, we think of things that make your life more enjoyable. Think about travel, think about social. Those are things that people don't always put in a plan, but are extremely important when it comes to planning, because up until school age, everybody has a plan. You know where you're going to school, you know what's going to happen at the end of the day. But when somebody reaches the age of 21 or 22 and the school is no longer there, what's the plan? Because going home and sitting around for somebody that was somewhat social is not really a great plan. So as basic as it sounds, it's something that we talk about when it comes to planning. And is it important to begin planning early, and how early? It really depends on the person. There is no cookie cutter approach to planning. So what I always say is, take little bites. It's extremely overwhelming. I do this for a living. Even with my own son, I had to take little bites because there's a lot there. So start thinking about what the person enjoys, or if you are the person, what you enjoy. And then we can speak about what's covered and what's not covered, and maybe what a financial plan can help you with.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think you kind of already answered this next question, like what future needs should individuals begin planning for now? I know you mentioned education, and I really appreciate that you mentioned things like vacation and living life and having fun, because that always gets left out when we have these conversations. People forget about those things, but enjoying your life is a very important part of planning for your life.
So, and when we speak about, well, when should we start? Well, a lot of people start during transition periods. So usually when you're in school, people start, at the age of 16, 17. They start speaking to you about transitioning the person into adulthood. Some people begin their planning then. Some people begin at birth once they have a diagnosis. It really depends on the individual and what the need is. But you're right. I mean, when we plan for the future, it's up to the family. Every family is different. Is it ever too late to plan? I'm going to say no. I do get calls that are disturbing. That could be from an adult parent that has an adult child that they haven't done anything for, and now that adult parent needs care. That's a little scary. That's not really a scenario you want to get into. Better to always start early than late, but don't think that there's a time limit, because there isn't. But the earlier you do it, the more flexibility you can have and the more planning you can do for that person.
I'm going to go off script for a second, and I'm going to have a different follow-up question than the one that's on the slide. When we say planning, is that something that is stagnant, or can you constantly review your planning process? If you've created a plan, do you always have to stick to it, or is that something that can change as your life changes?
You can absolutely change it as your life changes. I say, when we think of planning for a person with a disability, we all sit down, we do a life plan of everything they want, everywhere they want it to be. But maybe something happens. Maybe the disability gets worse. Maybe it gets better. Maybe the living situation has changed. They were living with a sibling, but can't do that anymore. So you can change it at any point. You can begin the process knowing who the care providers are, who's going to be involved, and within a year, within 5 years, that could completely change. So yes, you can continually change those type of benefits. I mean, there are things you can't change. We can speak about special needs trust, ABLE accounts, flexibility, but you can't completely change them. But those are things that you can move as the person moves. So it's never etched in stone. You can change it as the person changes, for sure.
So what government benefits are available to qualified individuals, and what can they help with?
Well, I mean, there are entitlement benefits, and then there's public assistance. Up until the age of 18, many of our families don't really receive any benefits. It's very difficult because everything is based on the income of the home, the parents, the care providers. But at the age of 18, you could have somebody living with you in $1 million house. You could have millions of dollars in the bank, and they still could get public assistance because benefits are available at the age of 18 based on the person. So the person with the disability shouldn't really have anything in their name over $2,000 that's outside of a trust or outside of an ABLE account. They can put money in those vehicles, but for the most part, you want to qualify them for all of those benefits, given that it's either an entitlement benefit that we all receive. Perfect example is Social Security. When you retire, everybody gets it. But there are other benefits for people with disabilities that are public assistance benefits, food stamps, Medicare. There are things that they can get that can help them. They can put money away. They can have a lot of money put away, but yet they can get every benefit that's out there. Every person is different, but once the person turns 18, I always say to my family, you definitely need to go back and reapply for government benefits, because prior to the age of 18 and after the age of 18 is a very different situation.
And that's a good thing to note too, because Social Security has different standards for children under 18 than they do for adults over 18. And let's say you are one of those families, your child under the age of 18 does get SSI. Even if they got approved at 17, there would still be an age 18 redetermination a year later, and so many families struggle with that. Like if you're a family that's close, let's say your child's 17 and a half, it's honestly better to wait until they turn 18 to apply for benefits to avoid some of the complex Social Security things.
100%, and make sure they don't have, I mean, you want to check and make sure that they don't have anything directly in their name. Little bank accounts, savings bonds, things that are going to, they're not going to be eligible for government benefits. So you want to make sure that you put that money away properly so that they are eligible. And there is a look back period from the federal government. So it used to be 3 years prior to the age of 18. Now it's 5 years. So we try to warn our families that we're not telling you to do anything illegal. It's completely legal, but there are great ways in which to put money away for individuals Able accounts are fantastic. Special needs trust are not for everyone, but they are a vehicle for our families as well.
And I'm going to answer a few questions from the Q&A that are related to like Social Security and the things that we're talking about right now. One of them is, can you save money while you're on SSDI? 100% you can. SSDI is an entitlement program, so it's based on work credits. It doesn't look at any other resources or income that you have, but it can still be good to utilize some of the resources that Kelly has mentioned, a trust and ABLE account. It's just because you're on SSDI now does not mean you may not need Medicaid in the future, and Medicaid is resource dependent, but you definitely can save. And there's definitely options, which I know we'll talk about as we get more into this, about how to save and benefits that you have. And then there's another. There is an age limit for Social Security disability in the United States once you reach full retirement age, which is now 67. I do not think there is anyone alive whose retirement age is under the age of 67. It may be 60, it might be somewhere between 66 and 6 months and 67, but it's up there. So if you have reached full retirement age, you are no longer eligible for disability. Social Security disability becomes Social Security retirement. But it is important to note that is way more, like, you should definitely still apply for Social Security disability if you're 62 instead of taking early retirement, because early retirement means you will have a 30% reduction in your retirement permanently. If you apply for Social Security disability instead, you could still be eligible for Medicare before 65, and you will not reduce your monthly benefit payment. So once you hit full retirement age, it'll just transfer to your full retirement amount.
And one of the things, Allison, that's one of the most missed benefits for our families is it used to be called DAC, but now it's called the Childhood Disability Benefit. So when the parents, the caregivers retire, if you're caring for an adult child with a disability, they can apply for the Childhood Disability Benefit. And what that benefit is that when the parent retires, say their Social Security is $500 a month. Your dependent adult child, and they don't have to live with you, they are eligible for 50% of that benefit. You will still get your 500. It will not affect you. They are entitled to up to 50% of that benefit while you're alive. And then when you pass away, that a dependent adult child is entitled to 75% of that benefit for the rest of their life. Now, keeping in mind that some people will say, well, I'm going to lose Social Security of it. You're going to get the higher of the two. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. Our families often miss that benefit. And what Allison is explaining is that if you went out early, you're going to take a reduction in your Social Security. Your dependent adult child will not. They will get the payment based on what you would have received at the age of 67. However, if you wait until you're 70, to retire, your child will still get what the amount was at the age of 67. So we always want to caution our families about that benefit, but when you sit down with Social Security and you have an adult child with a disability, they're not saying that to you. They're not saying you could have started charging this person lodging, which is also rent, at the age of 18 that they live with you, or there is this childhood disability benefit. So knowing more about the benefits that are available to your family is really important, because we often see families that pay for a ton of things, and these extra amounts could really help with the day-to-day, help them put money away, or you know what, that person could maybe go on a trip or do some of the things that are important to them because that extra money is available to them.
That is really important. It's also important to note that people assume Social Security is going to update them or be like, oh, your child has been on SSI since 18. They're going to get you on this DAC program. That is not true. A lot of times these things get missed. And so for DAC, you have to be disabled before the age of 22. And it can be if your parent is deceased, retired, or disabled themselves. They're also, and this is a question, what options does someone have if they are disabled by age 30? There are different credit rules for someone if they are 30 and under. Generally, the standard is you have to have worked 5 out of the last 10 years. Those rules, I think, do not start applying until you turn 31. It sounds like the person who asked this question was given misinformation from Social Security. I'd be happy. That's the kind of thing I'd happy to talk to about someone later. But if you go online, there is a chart that shows how many credits you need by the time you turn 23, I think
Yes.
by the time you turn 26, and then by how you turn 30. Like, so there are different limits when you are younger.
Wow, they got wrong information from Social Security. I am shocked. I am shocked here. What I tell my families are, you could call in on a Wednesday and get one answer, and you could call back on a Friday and get a different answer. So to Allison's point, try to research and get as much information as possible. They sometimes say things that are not quite accurate. That's the way that I'm going to put it. But just make sure that you look at the charts. I mean, there's a lot of information, even, when we look at able accounts and different things about age limits, just make sure that the information that they're giving you is correct. And you definitely should go on the website and reach out to Allison. I'm happy to help you as well, but there's a lot of information that our families are given that isn't always accurate, and we know that.
Yeah. And one thing, and I'll just say this, I know it's harder to call Social Security right now. You are always entitled to ask for a supervisor. If they actually escalate your claim, the supervisors are some of the most competent, nice people that I have worked with at Social Security in my career. They know things because they've been there like 15, 20 years, so they know this stuff. So that is definitely an option. It doesn't always work, but it is an option. Okay.
Absolutely.
And I know you've mentioned some of the legal structures, but what are some legal structures that families should consider as part of this planning process?
Well, I mean, they want to look at titling. You want to make sure that you have any accounts or anything like that, and the person with the disability's name on it. If it is directly going to the person, you could potentially bar them from government benefits. So you want to think about a special needs trust. You want to think about an ABLE account. There's a couple different types of trust. There's a first party, which is often utilized when there's a settlement or the person with the disability has money. There's also a third party trust, which is set up on behalf of the person. There's also a self-settled trust, which the person can set up themselves. But you also want to think in legal structure, guardianship, powers of attorney, guardians, trustees, estate planning, letter of intent. There are many things that our families have to take into consideration. Some of our families will say to me, you know what, I don't have a will. I've never done a will. Well, everybody has a will. It may not be the one that you're looking for, but the state in which you reside does have one for you. So when you're looking at legal structures, you want to make sure that you have the protections in place that you need for your families. I talk to a lot of families about guardianship. It's not for everyone. It's taking someone's rights away. Guardianship is not an all or nothing. Guardianship can be partial guardianship. You can have guardianship over legal or financial. It's up to you and your family. Powers of attorney. If something happened, do you want to step in? Is there somebody you want to speak on your behalf? You have to take care of that before. You can't wait until something happens. What we found during COVID was that a lot of our families, maybe had an adult child living with them or a person with a disability that they had always advocated for, but they didn't have anything in place. They didn't have any guardianships. They didn't have any powers of attorney. And when you appear at an emergency room, in all fairness to the doctors, without those documents, they really don't have to listen to you. Even me, that my son was nonverbal, was not able to make decisions for himself. They would not listen to me unless I had some type of paperwork to show them that I had the right to make those decisions for them. So it's really something that you should think about. Special needs trusts, enable accounts are also great way to put money away for the person. But like I said, it's up to the individual, but there are plenty of tools out there to tap into. You want to think about working with an attorney that specializes in this area. I have a house of 6 attorneys. When it came time for my own son's planning, they didn't specialize in this area. I say it's like going to a real estate attorney for a divorce. You want to think in terms of an attorney and legal professionals, accountants, people that specialize in this area that can help you and provide you with the right information.
Thank you so much for saying that, Kelly. I cannot emphasize that enough because as an attorney who gets asked questions all the time, I'm like, No, attorneys specialize just like physicians. You do not want to go to a podiatrist for a neurological condition. We do our best. We will try to
Exactly.
connect you with the right resources, but it's difficult. And I did want to take an opportunity when we're talking about like legal structures. I will talk a little bit about insurance. One thing people don't take advantage of is employer provided insurance. So not just health insurance, but employer provided life insurance, disability insurance, hospital insurance, critical care insurance. The reason it's so important to take advantage of these things, they do not ask health condition questions. If your employer pays into a policy, it pays into a policy for everybody, and they're not going to ask your genetic information, your health information. You can just opt into it. It is only there with you for that specific job. But a lot of these policies now have a rule that says, like, let's say you switch jobs, you've already gotten your diagnosis, but you pay into that policy with that employer for 3 years. They're not going to look at pre-existing conditions. Most places have a 12-month rule. As long as you pay into the policy for 12 months before you take the insurance, they are going to grant you the insurance. And that's not true of all of them. You would still need to read the policy, but it does give a little bit more flexibility for changing jobs. It's also a lot more affordable than trying to find a policy on your own. If your employer does offer it, a lot of times they help subsidize the cost of the policy. If you are not taking advantage of these things, you need to be.
And you also, if you are caring for somebody and you have them listed on a policy, you want to be careful of that because you can't list them straight out. You have to list either the special needs trust or, it's just because you could potentially, just like any, paid on death, same thing. If you have a person you're caring for and they have a special needs trust, you can list the special needs trust of versus that adult child or that person directly. So you want to keep that in mind. When it comes to life insurance, we have a lot of families that they have life insurance policies at work and they're unaware of them. Working for an insurance company, I can tell you it happens every day. The other thing you want to take into consideration is if you have an adult child with a disability, you want to see what the age limit is that the medical will cover them. Some companies go by the 26 years, but some companies will consider covering that person well beyond the 26 years. So it's something that you can have a conversation with. To Allison's point, I mean, there are a lot of employee benefits. If you are a person with a disability working, there are some that you definitely can take advantage of without disqualifying yourself. So it's definitely something you want to check into.
And I know this conversation about insurance can get difficult, especially when we're talking about genetic conditions and family diseases, because there are a lot of insurance companies that ask questions about it. And the reality is, because there's so many different insurance companies, there's so many different options, the best thing to do is work with a licensed insurance broker to see if they can help you find a policy that is right for you. I have also been told that certain things like group life insurance, like if you're a member of AAA, they send out life insurance applications all the time. I think my husband gets like 3 a year because we're AAA members. And group life insurance is easier to get than if you're just going through a company on its own because it's a group policy. So a lot of people are paying into it and then and not everybody takes out of it. And so it's easier to get those policies with something like Huntington's disease or family ataxia. And so that is also an option to try. And I know that's not, the reality is that it means that not everyone's going to be able to get insurance because GINA does not protect genetic discrimination from supplemental insurances. The only insurance that is protected under current law is health insurance. There are a few states who have expanded that. I know Louisiana has a law. I know Florida has a law. I don't know how that is playing out at this time. What are different types of special needs trusts, and how can they be used to benefit an individual with a disability?
Well, as I had said before, there's a first party special needs trust, which is a trust that's set up when the person owns the money or there's an accident or there's a lawsuit, but the person owns the money. The difference between a third party and a first party special needs trust is that upon death, a first party trust, if you receive Medicaid, they have a right for a clawback, which means that if there's any money left in that trust, when the person with the disability passes away, Medicaid can come and say, hey, we spent $1 million, we want that money back. If there's $2 in that trust, they can only get $2. But if there's $5 million, they can get their $1 million back. They can only get what's in there. People say to me, Kelly, why would I get a first party trust? You often don't have a choice. We also see that if there is a divorce situation and there's child support, many judges across the country, when there's a special needs individual, will have you set up a first party special needs trust for child support. So, I mean, those are some of the things that first party trusts are used for. They are used for the benefit of the individual, whether you're speaking about first party or third party. The difference with the third party is that there is no payback provision. You can get every government benefit in the world, and you can also have millions of dollars in that trust, and the person can have the best of both worlds. They're getting government benefits, but they have a lot of money that's put in that trust. There's also a self-settled trust. The person with the disability can create that. That one's relatively new, came out a few years ago, but the person with the disability can set that up. And there's also a pooled trust, which many nonprofits have set up for individuals. Most of them, the money, there's not that much money there, but they pool the money. And it is something that many individuals think about. They go through nonprofits to get a pooled trust. And upon death years ago, a person with a pooled trust, the money just stayed in the trust and went back towards everybody else. Now there are pooled trusts that you can actually get some of that money back upon the person's death. You really have to research it. When we talk about special needs trusts, I mean, what are they for? Why do you need them? They are to protect the person and allow them to continue to receive government benefits, but also put money away for them. You can utilize a special needs trust for what we refer to as a qualified disability expense, which is something that's going to make the person's life better. Can you purchase a vehicle with a trust? Absolutely. Can you put a house in a trust? Absolutely, as long as the house isn't underwater and there's money in the trust to take care of it. Can you purchase a vehicle with a trust? 100%. Do you purchase a red Corvette for a person that's a wheelchair user that can't really use that Corvette? No, but can you do an accessible van or an accessible vehicle for that person? 100%. Can you take that person on a trip every year with a trust? 100%. But can you take all of his siblings or everyone in their family? Absolutely not. You can take the person and a care provider. Can you use it for services that are not covered by government benefits? You know, orthotics, hippotherapy, a sensory room, a new iPad once a year, or once a week, whatever the person needs. Anything that's going to make the quality of their life better. Is it watched by the government? Do they want to make sure that this trust is being utilized for a person with a disability? 100%. That's what it's for. We're not there to, to just let everybody else use it. The reason that the trust came into play is because years ago, people with disabilities were left money, or there was a medical malpractice suit, and the money was left to others on their behalf, but didn't exactly get to be used for that person. So a trust is really to continue to have them live in the lifestyle they're accustomed to, or to provide them with everything that makes their life a little bit better. So that's really what a trust is for. I mean, people have asked me crazy things to pay for a trust. I mean, can you pay for a pool? Absolutely, if it's going to help the person make their life better. Can you pay for a tiki bar? Not really. That's not really what it's for. I mean, putting a house in a trust that's underwater and that it's in Massachusetts, and there has to be snow removal and there's no money. No, but you also want to keep in mind that with the first party trust, there's a payback provision. So do you want to put a house and a vehicle in a first party special needs trust? Not necessarily. Do you want to put life insurance in a first party trust? Not necessarily. You would put it in a third party trust, because when something happens to that individual, maybe there's something in there that can be left to others. So it's just a lot of things to think about. In ABLE accounts, I mean, I love ABLE accounts. That's something else. Years ago, when they were first established, there are age limits, but the age limits are you have to have had the disability prior to the age of 26. Does that mean that if you have a disability at the age of 36, you can't have an ABLE account? No, it has to be that the diagnosis was there prior to the age of 26. In 2026, the age limit's going up to 46. So, I mean, ABLE accounts are another thing. What we're seeing is that you can make transfers between a special needs trust, if you have money in it, into an ABLE account. So it's something else that our families can think about. Up until, January of this year, you could not use a special needs trust for food and shelter because it was duplicating what government benefits were giving you. So many of our families would take money out of a special needs trust and transfer it into ABLE. They now allow you to pay for food and shelter out of a special needs trust. So that's relatively new, but there's a lot of things that you can do for the person with a disability. You cannot write a check directly to that person. It is not a checking account for them. It is for something to make their life better. You can pay providers, you can pay for services, but you're not writing checks for that person. We can talk about ABLE and how you can utilize ABLE for the day-to-day and make it easier for the person to live independently and not have to go to a parent or a care provider to go out and pay for pizza. That's where ABLE comes into play. And there are many limits with ABLEs now that really help individuals. But with the exception of 23 states as of today, and it's changing daily, ABLE does have a payback provision unless you're in one of those 23 states. And ABLE has limits. You can only put in 1 year 19,000 in an ABLE account and an additional 15,060 in wages. Love ABLE, but do I put all my money in ABLE? I couldn't, because if you want to leave life insurance or anything over 19,000 in 1 year to ABLE, you would disqualify. So you could leave a larger amount to a special needs trust and then utilize ABLE basically for the same things you could utilize a special needs trust for. Keeping in mind that all disbursements, once again, have to be qualified disability expenses. They can't just be for something ridiculous. They have to be to make the person with the disability their life better. You can see, Allison, I could go on about the two for an hour alone. So, it's tough to do a 10-minute on the two, because at ABLE, we do a whole presentation just on ABLE and the usages of ABLE. I love ABLE, but I also see a lot of families that are getting to that limit of the 100,000 overall. Then what do? That's when you have to put the money into a special needs trust. And I can say that, we do have people that have been utilizing ABLE to keep a lot of money in there. And now the government has been allowing us to transfer money into ABLE and not disqualify them. So that's a good thing.
We do have some live questions about some special needs trust accounts, and I don't know if you can answer all of them, but I'm going to ask a few. Can you put a 401k account into a third-party trust?
You can. It's not advisable, but you absolutely, there are ways to put all kinds of accounts into a special needs trust. Yes, you can do that. You can roll 529s into ABLE now as well. That's for a 529. But with the retirement, it's just a little more difficult because it's considered money owned by the person. So there are some penalties regarding it, but you can absolutely do that.
Well, and this is a good question. Can you set up a special needs trust as a placeholder to be listed as a beneficiary when there is a life insurance payout, or do you have to have the assets already to start the trust?
That's a great question. We get that every day. Actually, you can go to the proper attorneys, and we can give you lists of attorneys that work for us, that work with organizations that only work with our families, that do special needs planning. But I can tell you that you can have it set up and sitting there, and you don't have to put any money in it. So it can be there, it can be ready, it can have a tax ID, and it could have nothing in it. The other thing is, you can also, and it's not, I always caution you when I tell you this, but you can have language set up in your will that upon death, before you do any disbursements of my assets, please set up a special needs trust for my son. Now, does that protect you today? If my mother or someone left my son that had special needs money straight out, no. But if something happened to me and to my husband, and the language is in my will, because if you pass away, it automatically goes to your spouse. But if you both pass away, it goes to your children, your adult children. And if somebody has a disability, you don't want to leave them money straight out. So you can put language in your will to have a trust established, but you can have it established now and kind of take off that burden and that craziness that somebody else would have to do if something happened to you. So you can absolutely have it set up today. And then people will say to me, oh, Kelly, how much do they cost? We deal with families across the country. Depending upon the bells and whistles with a special needs trust, they could run you anywhere from $1,500 to $8,000, depending upon what you want with it. Do you set up a special needs trust online? I definitely would not. The language is always a concern. And when you do set up a special needs trust, the government may say to you, and it's not uncommon, hey, do you have a special needs trust? And if you say yes, they say, we want to take a look at it. What they're looking at it for is it a first or third party? Because is there a payback in there that they may be entitled to? But also, is the language correct? The trust has to follow the person with the disability. So if you live in Florida and you are the person with the disability, that's where the trust has to be drafted. It follows the person with the disability. So the government will also ask you for a copy, but it's not because you're in trouble. It's because they want to know that you have it. But yes, you can set up a trust at any point. A long way around it. There you go.
Thank you. And I did, since I asked specifically about a 401k, there's been a few questions about, can you use 401k expenses for health insurance or like disability expenses? Yes, a lot of 401k and IRA providers have an exception that say you can withdraw funds prior to age 59 without tax penalty as long as you have been deemed disabled. You would have to go through your specific 401k and IRA providers to see what their specific rules are. But if you have a disabling condition, you have been deemed disabled, you can go through and take money out of those and use them. And for a lot of people, if you have reached your full pension criteria at work and you have to stop working because you are disabled, a lot of times there are separate disability pension requirements than retirement pension requirements. And so it's important to ask those. But if you have reached like your full status for your pension, but you have to go out early because you are now disabled, check with your HR department about what disability retirement looks like versus regular retirement. So what are some other financial tools that can be used for individuals with special needs? How can it be a benefit for an individual with a disability? And I know we've definitely talked about a number of these things, like how you use your 401k, your IRA. Kelly has mentioned ABLE accounts numerous times. I'm excited to see her presentation at our convention about ABLE accounts. I'm really looking forward to this now.
So just a note to the 401k, a disabled person cannot transfer a retirement plan into a special needs trust without first liquidating it. I didn't say that. So I want to, and paying taxes on the realized income. So I want to say that, full disclosure, like Allison and I are saying, you really need to work with a special attorney that can help you with some of these things before you make any decisions or purchase anything. I definitely want to alert everyone to that. Now, as far as ABLE, that's another tool that, to this point, I mean, I love ABLE in some states. Like I said, there are 23 states as of today that don't have a payback provision. I happen to be in a state that there is a payback provision. So what would happen is if there was any money in ABLE and the person passes away, you have a right, Medicaid has a right to go after that money. Now, the difference between ABLE and a special needs trust is that the Medicaid clock starts from day one that you received it. So if you received a Medicaid at the age of 6, and you set up the special needs trust at 26, they look back to day 6 when you first, started receiving it. Now, with an ABLE account, you only have a Medicaid payback from the day you started the ABLE account. So if I started an ABLE account today is the first day that the payback provision begins. Doesn't matter if I receive $5 million from them. They have to start the day that you set up the ABLE account. So that's a good thing with ABLE. The other thing is it gives a person with a disability flexibility. If they want to take an Uber, if they want to get a new phone, they don't have to go to their parent or a care provider to help them. But keeping in mind with ABLE is a lot cheaper than a special needs trust. I think they're only about $35 a year. They're relatively inexpensive. You can go on the ABLE website and do the comparison of every state. When ABLE was first introduced, they were saying that you had to go to the state in which you reside. Didn't happen that way because not every state created ABLE accounts. There's one in Ohio, there's one in Pennsylvania, they're all over the country. You can go on the ABLE website and do the comparison of the different states and the different bells and whistles. They're all basically the same. Some have a debit card, some have a credit card, but keep in mind the rules in the state in which the person with the disability resides are the rules that you're going to follow. So if you get an ABLE account, say in a state that doesn't have a payback provision, but you are in a state that does have a payback provision, that payback provision will apply because it follows you, not the state your ABLE account's in. So, I mean, I love ABLE. I love it because it encourages, you know, people with disabilities to work and not disqualify. So that additional 15,060 doesn't affect you at all. The 19,000 is the most you can have in 1 year. If you don't spend it, you can roll it over till you get to 100,000. But I would also say check with your state, because there are some states that you can have close to $500,000 in an ABLE account and not disqualify. So it is very state dependent as well, but it is a great tool for our families. If you've done nothing else, put the money into an ABLE account. You can also have the government, instead of doing the payee, that you send it to a checking account every month that you have to transfer it over. You can send it directly to ABLE. They do that now for you as well. So what I say to my families is ABLE is a great tool. We have a lot of families that do ABLE, and any type of life insurance or any larger amounts, they can put into a special needs trust so that they can preserve it. And you can transfer between the two. So that's yet another tool that I would consider if I was, you know, if I was in this situation. I would consider I was in this situation and I considered both of them. So I think they're great tools for our families.
And before I get to this next question about guardianship, I do want to add that not everybody, like especially since ABLE accounts are still only for people who are disabled before age 26, and that doesn't apply to everyone here. There are other, like, it's not disability specific, but looking at options like money market accounts, making sure you have a high yield savings account. Everyone on this call, if you have a savings account, should have a high yield savings account. They're really easy to open. You get significantly more return than you do at your regular bank, and there are no strings attached. I get a lot of questions from HD families about long-term care insurance. I personally am not a fan of long-term care insurance. It's really expensive. Most HD families don't get it. I've seen families, unfortunately, have difficulty using the insurance. So paying thousands of dollars into the insurance that you can't benefit from, Kelly and I don't want that. We're trying to make sure everyone here is set up for situations where if you put money into something, it stays your money and you get it back out. And so that's the benefit of also speaking with a qualified financial planner, someone who may understand. And I know Kelly mentioned this earlier. I think she said she had a team of 6 attorneys all together, like all said and done when she was working with her son. Like there are a lot of people that may be involved in this process because everyone is so specialized and you want to make sure you get the appropriate, correct advice for you. But there are other options. So if you are younger and you're not at the point where you need to like put funds, like you're not at the special needs trust point, you're not at a trust point, there are other, you know, financial things like a money market account, high yield savings account, other investment opportunities that you can put money into to get a return. So when you are ready to put things in a trust, you have things saved and set aside. And again, taking advantage of the employer provided benefits. If your company has a 401k match, you should be putting in enough to get the company match. I say this as if this was everyone had the same number of funds and it's an idealistic society. We know that that is not always the case, but if you have the availability to use some of these tools and you can financially afford to do it, it is important to take advantage of these things and get free money. If you have an HSA account at work and your employer wants to match your HSA, take advantage of all of those things. Okay. So
just to your point, Allison, I just wanted to add one thing to your point. So when we talk about meeting with financial professionals, the designation that my 400 have, and it's not unique to MassMutual, it is in the industry. So if you're working with a financial planner, I don't care what company they're from, I'm not a salesperson, but my advisors have something called the CHSNC. It's the Chartered Special Needs Consultant designation. And what that is that these individuals have gone and actually got a designation in working with our families. They're familiar with disabilities. They're familiar with the different types of insurance that are available to our families. When it comes to, like a 401k or moving it, they know this. When you work with an advisor, and I don't care what company they're from, if you're having to explain to them why someone is getting government benefits in your family or they're not sure on them, I would run away. It's the same thing with the attorneys. If they don't do more than, if they tell you I do 1 or 2 special needs trusts a year, run away. There are individuals in the industry that, the Academy for Special Needs Planners, the Alliance, NALA, the National Elder Law Association. There are attorneys that specialize in working with our families. It's the same thing in the financial industry. I don't care what company you go to, make sure that the person you're working with, fee-based or non-fee-based, knows about the situation you're in, understands that you're trying to leave a legacy for you, for your family, and understand that a disability is a little bit different than the typical families that they're working with. So I tell my families, because like, oh, we've had the advisor for 20 years. Okay, great, but they don't deal with families like ours. They don't know how to preserve government benefits. So that would be a red flag to me. And to Allison's point, I mean, my son, my husband, my daughter-in-law, my other son, everybody is an attorney in this house. They stood and looked at each other when it came to drafting a special needs trust. And they said, this is not what we do. So we know that it takes specialty to do it. And we just want to caution you, you don't have to come to MassMutual. You can go to any law firm you want. But I cringe when I hear, well, we have a family attorney that's going to do the trust for me. That scares me, to be honest with you. And when we talk about, working with individuals in the industry, just work with somebody that understands your family situation for sure.
And that doesn't mean they have to understand your diagnosis. They don't necessarily have to understand the ins and outs of Huntington's disease or the ins and outs of ataxia. That's not realistic. Like, these attorneys don't specialize in diseases, they specialize in their profession. But if it's somebody who works with families with disabling conditions, who has some understanding of neurodegenerative diseases, they are going to understand much better than most.
Exactly. And not everybody does understand the diagnosis. I just happen to know both of your diagnoses because I've been working with you guys forever, but we do have people that call and say, explain to me, what is this? And that's really what it's about. You want them to understand the long term so that they know how to help plan for your family. When we talk about, long-term care, I come from the insurance industry. I am somebody that totally sees families like that don't get it all the time and the cost of it. But the good thing about long-term care is if you do have it, it's good if you are a care provider as well, because if something happens to you, who steps in and cares for that person for you? So if you have it, great. If you're younger, try to get it now before any diagnosis. But if not, to Allison's point, it's extremely expensive and very difficult to get. So I'm on the same page with that as well.
And we've gotten a few questions about Medicaid, and we're talking about all of these financial planning options, the special needs trust, the ABLE accounts, because it allows a lot of Americans to get on Medicaid. Medicaid is essential if you have a disabling condition, especially degenerative conditions like ataxia and Huntington's disease, where you're very likely going to need full-time care at some point, because Medicaid will cover long-term care costs. Medicaid can also cover in-home health aid costs.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that Medicaid can cover. Medicaid covers drug and prescription costs. It covers vision and dental. Medicare, the age 65 insurance, or with SSDI, does not. You have to pay additional funds to get vision, dental, and prescription drug coverage. Medicare does not cover long-term care costs. So most individuals who there are very few people who go into nursing home care that are purely private pay and stay private pay for the duration of their stay. Most people either spend out they may start private pay, but then they end up on Medicaid because they've exhausted all of their funds, or they have assets set aside in ABLE accounts, special needs trusts, so they can balance how they spend money for their care and have all of the coverage that they need. But Medicaid really, it's an incredibly wonderful health insurance benefit. It gets complicated because yes, not all providers take it, but it covers a lot more expenses and care. And I think like Medicaid can help cover like shower bars and like home upgrades. And if you have specific home upgrades that are needed, there's a lot of states that provide state specific grants for modifications to your home. But the reason we're talking about all of these financial planning options is to help make you Medicaid eligible or to help get SSI eligibility, which helps with Medicaid eligibility. Okay. So the question is, please tell us about guardianship and other alternatives. I know, Kelly, you mentioned a lot of these earlier. For the sake of time, we may, because I know you were talking about durable power of attorney, did you?
Just have something, right? You want to have something in place, is what I say. And it's not an all or nothing, but every family needs to make their own choice with it, because full guardianship is taking someone's rights away. So you want to think about that as well.
And I know most people don't come to that decision lightly. A lot of people are forced into full guardianship. The reason to have the conversation and put other things in place earlier, like a durable power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, supported decision making, it's so you don't ever have to get to the guardianship step. Guardianship can cost thousands of dollars. You have to go to state court. A judge decides if your loved one is competent. It can be a really ugly process if there's like infighting in the family. It's not something we want for individuals. And that's why Kelly mentioned the other options, because those are better and that empowers the person who has the disabling condition.
Right. To make their own decisions at that point that they can. Absolutely.
What is the best way for families to share important information to future caregivers?
You know, I'm a big fan. I've done workshops on it across the country. Letter of intent. Lori knows I've done it before. Not legally binding, but has been used in the court of law. And it's kind of like a letter to the babysitter on steroids, but it's for a person with a disability. It speaks about future caregivers. It speaks about housing. It speaks about marriage. It speaks about religion. Anything that's important to that person. If you are the person with a disability, we have a form, and I'll send it to Lori afterwards. We always make it available. You don't have to send it with me. Put it with your vital documents. If you've done nothing else, this costs nothing. They, once again, have been used in a court of law and upheld, but it's really your hopes, your wishes, and your dreams. You can speak about physicians that are great. You can speak about physicians you wouldn't take your dog to. You can speak about medications that have worked. You can speak about medications that absolutely did not work. My son was on the ketogenic diet a couple times. Everything was in there, the results of it. You can speak about personal things too. Loves his brother, but he doesn't ever want to live with his brother. His father walked out when he was born, or his mother, and I don't ever want to live with them, or I want to live with this person if anything happens to me. Love letter of intent. If you do nothing else after this webinar today, please try to fill it out. Have that document in your home or somewhere where somebody else knows where it is, because the plans up here are not going to help a future caregiver. And speak about who you want involved in the person's life, who may be able to take over or help you in the future if you need help. But letter of intent for me is always something that I speak about, because you could put it in a notebook. My son's was about this big because he had tons of treatments and things that I couldn't explain if I wasn't here. If I got on a plane and didn't come back, I mean, who would step in? Even though I had a husband, there were many things I did that he didn't know about. So it's something that I always say to my families, please try to do it.
And this is our last question, but I think it's really important. Where can someone turn for help in preparing for their legal and financial future? And I know Kelly has mentioned a few of these things already.
Sure. I mean, I would say, look for somebody with the CHSNC, a financial advisor. When it comes to attorneys, if you look for the Special Needs Alliance, if you go on their website, they have attorneys throughout the country. You can put your information in and they can show you a list of individuals that specialize in special needs and this type of planning. Same thing with the Academy for Special Needs Planners, NALA, the National Elder Law Association. And then you can look for CPAs with this type of training, but you want to make sure that you're working with individuals that specialize in this area. And if you ever need referrals or information, we're happy to give out the names of the organizations. They do not work for my organization, and many of them have been brought to our attention by nonprofits or because they're special needs parents, siblings, caregivers themselves.
And I think it is important to note that if people are looking for a specific quote unquote disability attorney, those don't exist. Disability falls into a lot of different spectrums. It's the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's civil rights, it's the EEOC, equal employment law. It's elder law attorneys. Elder law attorneys do a lot of the things that we have discussed today. It's the guardianship, power of attorney, trust, special needs trust. You may go to someone who's a specific trust attorney. Trusts are very, very complicated. So if you know you're going to have a complicated trust, it is important to work with a specialized trust attorney. But a lot of individuals, because in this country, we don't think disabilities can happen before the age of 55. That is why most elder law attorneys are the ones who are doing this. And so it is important to note when we tell you to go talk to an elder law attorney, it's just because that is their specialty. But I know I have sent a lot of families to Special Needs Alliance. I have sent a lot of families to NELA, and these are great because these organizations manage their attorneys and they have their own governing body and their own criteria. Because Kelly and I do not have the time to manage all of these people and make sure that they're doing all the things that they're supposed to. That is a great.
But I can tell you, they're at a lot of events that I'm at across the country, and I do see like the educational events, and they're constantly updating themselves. What's going on in the Hill? How can we advocate for people with disabilities? So that part of it I love, because I think it's a small community, though very large, and we all do kind of see each other in these circles. So we know who's the real deal and who's not.
And so this is contact information, general contact information for MassMutual, and then disability planning and resources. This will take you to HDSA's disability page. There is an Ask Allison feature where you can fill out a form site. My email is on the website somewhere, but anyone is able to email me directly. I don't know if I can put that in the chat.
And Lori, I don't know if Cheryl sent you, if Cheryl's on, if she sent you the letter of intent, but please feel free to share it with everybody.
Absolutely. We'll certainly do that. And thanks so much, Allison and Kelly, for covering such great information and a lot of it in this introductory webinar. I know that there's a lot of questions in the Q&A that we didn't get to, and me and Allison and Kelly will get together after this. We'll take a look at those questions, and then we'll decide where we're going to go next in some of these more specialized, in-depth webinars on topics that are important to our attendees here. But thank you so much, Kelly, for all of this information. And I will share the letter of intent, and then we can share contact information for you as well, Allison, if you'd like.
And that SpecialCare comes to me, so that's no problem. So if they have questions, feel free to send it to SpecialCare as well. We're happy to help in any way. Allison, you and I could have done this for 3 hours today, but
we really could have. Whenever I get asked to speak at something, I'm like, really? Really give me 30 minutes? They're like, is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'll say very little. I'll just high-level overview, because I know someone at some point in the chat said this is all overwhelming, and Kelly and I understand that. That is why we are here today. And we're not trying to make it overwhelming for everyone. We just want to be a footing, a first start, a first step. That's why we are here to answer questions. That's why we want you to reach out and contact us if you have questions. We know this is not something you can do alone.
No, and you have to take little bites, and we can certainly look at doing it for just one topic as being able, one topic as being letter of intent. It's a lot in one day, but we're giving you an overview to Allison's point. And these are things that you really need to start thinking about. That's how you start the process. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for everyone, a recording of this webinar will be available on the NAF website and also on the HDSA website. So thank you again, Kelly and Allison, and thank you to everyone that joined our webinar today, and take care and have a great day, rest of your day, everyone.